Namaskar and welcome to In Conversation. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. India is known as the land of yoga. Few extraordinary individuals have taken this magic of ancient wisdom to people around the world. Paramhansa Yogananda is one such preeminent spiritual leader of the modern times. Many remember him as the author of the best-selling spiritual classic, Autobiography of a Yogi. He's touched and transformed millions of lives through his teachings of Kriya Yoga. We are at Yogoda Ashram near Delhi to meet somebody who's taking forward the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Let me welcome Swami Saralananda Giriji. Swamiji, welcome to Doordarshan.
It's wonderful to be here, Shubhenduji. So it's a pleasure to meet you and to be on your program.
Thank you, Swamiji. Why don't we begin our conversation by talking about yoga? Today it is known across the world, practiced in different forms. If you could help us understand, what about yoga brings peoples and civilizations together?
The ancient science of yoga brings so many different benefits, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's a very practical science that isn't really based on belief. It's based on practicing something to get an experience of the divine. And so anyone in any part of the world, at any time, there are yoga practices that they can do to make just a deeper connection with God. No matter what religion they follow, no matter where they're coming from, that practicing yoga is a universal science. And so it's really an aid to helping people go deeper into that relationship they can have with God.
If you talk about the legacy of Paramhansa Yogananda, the manner in which he brings the East and the West closer together, especially in the manner in which he spreads the message of yoga and meditation, Kriya Yoga, he talks about. What can you tell us about him?
Well, he grew up in India and was trained by an enlightened master who comes from a line of enlightened masters that were very proficient in the practice of Kriya Yoga. And so, again, this universal science of Kriya Yoga, where he says the byways of different religious faiths, they meet on the highway of yoga, where a person can really learn to commune with God in a deeper way by practicing certain yogic meditation techniques. And on the path that he has, he created a home study course called the Yogoda Satsanga Society Lessons. And a person can have that mailed to their home, can study in their home, also join meditation groups nowadays online. And there's a YSS app that people can join meditations very easily nowadays. And so his message was that each religion should be respected as a true path back to God. That by following people following their own religion, they can truly, find God. All the saints and religions have shown that has been a successful path back to reuniting their consciousness with God. And so yoga is an aid that can help people to still the restless mind, because so many of us, when we start to try to learn how to pray, how to meditate, the mind is so restless. And to get control of that mind, a person can practice yoga meditation techniques that they can help learn to concentrate more deeply, and then take that concentrated mind and really focus it on some aspect of God within that they can commune with.
Right. And if you can talk about the concept of Kriya Yoga, there are so many forms of yoga practice that exist around the world. If you could, for a layperson, to understand, what is Kriya Yoga?
Kriya Yoga is a path it's a balanced path. So it's a path of Raja Yoga. It's taking the best of the various forms of yoga. You have Hatha Yoga, you have Bhakti Yoga, you have Jnana Yoga, you have Karma Yoga. And it's combining those into kind of a complete path that someone can follow. We have kind of 4 basic techniques: the energization exercises, the Hong Sa technique of concentration to concentrate the mind, the Om technique of meditation to try to commune with that sacred Om vibration, which is called the Holy Spirit in the West, but here we call it the Om vibration. And then we have an actual technique called Kriya Yoga. It's an advanced meditation technique. And so a person in their daily life performs their service in the world, trying to feel that they're doing it for God. But they anchor their days in a morning and an evening meditation where they practice certain scientific meditation techniques. And then also, it's really important to learn how to sit very still and be open and receptive to the blessings that God is showering into each of our lives each day. And so a period of sitting still in the silence, and then also just expressing our love for God, our longing to feel more of God's love in our lives. That's an important part, that devotional part of the path. And so it's a complete path that a person can follow very simply, and anyone can do it kind of anywhere.
That's wonderful to learn. You speak about a beautiful relationship with God, but unfortunately, sometimes the concept of what is God or who is God can also divide people in our world. You speak about Christ consciousness and also Krishna consciousness in the same breath. Can you help us understand how do you articulate that idea of higher consciousness that prevails across faiths?
Yeah, so yes, in every faith, that you'll come across saints who have attained very high states of communion with God, very high states of awareness of God's presence. And it's given different names, but it is truly one state of consciousness. And it can be called Christ consciousness. It can be called the Kutastha Chaitanya here in India. It can be called other names in other religions. But we're all seeking this communion with this divine consciousness that God has placed throughout creation, and that's the Kutastha Chaitanya, or the Christ consciousness. As we learn to feel more of that, attune our lives with that state of high consciousness, which is filled with love, is filled with compassion, is filled with peace, then we can see that, and each person experiences this coming up through their own religion. And those at the kind of the peak, the saints wouldn't be arguing over terms, what we call a certain state of consciousness. They know that this is a state I've attained, this is a state that others have attained in other religions. It's the one consciousness where we're feeling that beautiful attunement with God, that perfect attunement with God, and it comes in various names.
And you're saying that this higher consciousness is the commonality across all faiths, not something that divides faiths, but something that unites each of them.
Exactly. As children of God, we've all been given this potential within our soul to realize our oneness with God. Every parent, wants to love their children and wants to experience the love of their children in return. And so we're been given this wonderful state of Christ consciousness, Kutastha Chaitanya, from our parent, our God. God is in cosmic consciousness. He gave all his children this spirit experience of cosmic consciousness when he cast us out into creation. We have to get back to him, and it's through this state of Kutastha Chaitanya, or Christ consciousness, that eventually we can go back to God. And so God is so equally loving of all his children in all the places of the world. He's given a divine message through various religions at various times for the needs of those people and the ongoing needs of those people. And so we just have to realize that we're one world family. And though your religion may be different from somebody else, that we're all going toward the same goal of that oneness with God.
And from talking about high consciousness, I want to talk about one's daily struggles with concepts and practice of, say, meditation. I heard one of your sermons in which you talk about this tug of war that one feels, one can relate to, that I want to meditate on the present, but my mind is getting distracted. Things of the past, anxieties of the future. How do we bring it together?
Well, when our consciousness is flowing outward in the normal, ordinary state, the energy is coming down from the brain, through the spine, out into our sense organs. Those sense organs are reporting back infinite amount of impressions from the outer world. Our mind is organizing that. It's a very restless state of consciousness. And so one needs to learn, so that's an outward flow of the prana, the energy in the body, to the sense organs, to the muscles. And we can perform our daily activities because of that. In meditation, what we're trying to learn is how to withdraw that prana back into the altars of the spine and the brain. And if we can withdraw that energy, our consciousness retires, the body becomes calmer. And without all those distracting thoughts, we find that we can achieve a level of deep concentration within. And because we are still, we can begin to intuitively feel something of God's peace. It often starts as a deeper level of peace than we've experienced before. And that can blossom into deeper love, deeper joy. But we have to get away from the surface of the body, which is so restless in all the senses. And we do that through practicing scientific meditation techniques that are part and parcel of the path of yoga, Kriya Yoga in my particular case. Yeah.
And one of the struggles in the outside world, I want to refer to some of the context. We're living through times where there are global conflicts that we learn about. There is mindless violence, killing. It leaves an individual feeling helpless, that we can't do much about it, we can't change it. There is a degree of despair, a certain degree of hopelessness that sets in. Mm-hmm. What does Paramahansa Yogananda say? What does his teaching say about navigating through these times of turmoil? Because I learned that when he was preaching, it was also the time of global conflicts. So if you could give us some insight into how does one individual navigate through this very difficult world?
Right. Good question. One of the things that he taught was that we should include God in our daily life throughout our day in different ways. Sometimes we're praying for assistance for somebody else. Sometimes we're praying for the world. Just including God in our thoughts as we perform our duties. And let's just say someone's reading an article or watching a news broadcast on something, there's conflict in the world. You know, one person could just watch it all the way to the end and hear a lot of negativity in the world. And at the end of that broadcast, or reading that article, they kind of have that sense of, as you said, hopelessness, what can I do? But let's just say a person's reading this article and is going through and hears of a tragedy in some part of the world. And they just take a minute and they just pray to God to help those suffering in that area of the world and just connect with God, asking for his blessings to come into that part of the world, to bless those individuals, to give them his peace, to send his healing power, to give understanding so that there's less conflict. And just prays just for a minute. And then goes on with the rest of the article and finishes the article. Think of the difference in your consciousness, in my consciousness, if we take that approach to experiencing life, where it's not just letting life kind of bombard us with a lot of negativity, but proactively connecting our consciousness with the divine consciousness of God.
And Swamiji, how difficult is it to follow that path? And I ask this question is because not just the conflicts which are happening far away from us, but our daily lives are also full of different kinds of stress. Mental health has become a real challenge. Families, relationships are getting strained. With money, we can buy a lot of comforts and a lot of goods and technologies, but not inner peace. Mm-hmm. Where is it that we as individuals in our times are going astray?
Mm-hmm. If we want to live a peaceful life, then we need to go to the source of peace on a daily basis, which is God. And if we connect with that source of peace, and then come out and face the complexity. I'm not saying modern life is complex. Relationships have always been complex. How do we get a sense of how can we have strong relationships, loving relationships? How can we understand? How can we bridge gaps when there is conflict and inharmony? Well, God is always trying to guide us in our lives and is trying to be a force of support, of wisdom for us, and of love to be able to share with others. And so Paramahansa Yogananda taught that, you know, the basic law of right human behavior is self-reform. And that means if we can put the majority of our effort to changing ourselves for the better, then we will influence others in the world by our example.
Right. And also my question about mental health was emanating from when I was reading about you. You were born in Canada, you grew up there, studied psychology. I'm curious to understand where does science and spirituality meet, and what was your, what drew you to Indian spiritual traditions? What was your experience like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's many wonderful professionals nowadays that are understanding much better the different kinds of mental challenges that people can experience. And there's a lot of wonderful therapies out there that can help as a base to have mental health. You want to have, a practice of meditation that gives you that inner calmness, that you have a base of feeling loved, a base of feeling peace, and a base of feeling causeless joy from God. And that helps with mental health. But again, certain people experiencing...
So this is causeless joy in place of causeless anxiety.
Exactly, yes, yeah. And with, the causeless joy, the causeless peace that God just gives you because you are a child of God. He wants these things to flow into your soul, to flow into your consciousness. That is a good base for mental health. Now, some may be struggling with different kinds of challenges, and it's good for them to go to professionals and get that professional help. Because, some of them are very extreme, and you need a professional to help you through those kinds of challenges. But for the average individual who's trying to live a calm, loving, harmonious life with others who have some challenges, yoga provides a wonderful, wonderful base to be inspired to be a better person, to be inspired to give more, to be more thoughtful, to be more considerate. That will come naturally from the practice of meditation, because what you find within, you find more of it, then you can share that without.
As wonderful yoga and meditation is, a young person might ask, where is the time for it? I'm busy on my mobile phones. There are social media updates that I must account for. Yes. I'm engaged in these outward, if I may use the word, distractions. How do you convince them, the young especially, to take that journey inwards towards yoga and meditation? What is the message for them?
I would say that yoga is simple. It doesn't take a lot to begin to practice the basics of yoga meditation. And as they can spend even just 10 or 15 minutes a day, they can experience a different source of happiness. People are seeking happiness in different ways. They're seeking happiness through social media. They're seeking happiness, in pursuing their career. They're seeking happiness. They can learn to seek happiness in meditation. And with that, again, that causeless joy that just God flows into our soul, that if we are quiet enough, still enough, we can begin to feel that blessing flowing into our consciousness. And so even if children can begin to learn for even 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, practice meditation, then they have an experience in their consciousness that is, this is a source of happiness, and they can do a comparison. I'm getting this kind of happiness from meditation, and I'm getting this kind of happiness from social media. And maybe it's a mixed bag from social media where some of it's not so good for my life. And if I do too much of it, I feel myself being drawn off balance. But if they have this comparison of what is true inner peace and balance, then they can use social media in a balanced way and not get too caught up in it. They can use it in a very positive way. And so yoga is a lot about balance.
I want to talk about another challenge that the young in particular face in today's times, the challenge of drug menace. Data shows some 300 million people, mostly young people, are affected by it. Now, it is also seen by those who are stuck in the world, in the dark world of drugs, as an escape from reality, that their lives are difficult and they want to escape, and they take help of means like that. How does one show them the path of yoga and meditation from that world of darkness?
Well, first off, my heart goes out to all those who are suffering from any of those kinds of addictions. It's really, really difficult. You may know people, I know people that are really struggling with that. And it's not easy. It's just simply not an easy path to follow. And so they should go for, again, professional help is very important to help them overcome their addictions. And then as they get that kind of support, then you can incorporate into some principles of yoga into their life. But I would say those who are under the very extreme forms of addiction, they really do need professional help and guidance. And there's many different, medical professionals that are helping in this area, and psychologists, psychiatrists that have really wonderful programs to help them break that cycle of addiction. And then as that is gaining success, then you're able to start to practice the principles of yoga. Because the practice of yoga assumes a certain degree of mental health to be able to truly practice them deeply. And so you work on, if you're addicted, you work on your addiction first, and then you can move to start practicing certain principles of yoga and make that more and more and more a part of your life.
The kind of climate crisis that we are witnessing today in the world, the signs of which we see all around us, there is a certain degree of disconnect that we have with our own environment if we're listening to our planet very clearly. And I learned about, of course, the deadly fires in California, Los Angeles, where one of your ashrams are also located. How do you also articulate this challenge that the humanity faces today? The sheer disconnect that we are having with our immediate environment.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so we essentially, our organization, its mission is to teach people to concentrate in meditation and learn to feel God's presence, and also then to, in whatever way their conscience guides them, to become a very positive person in their family, in their local neighborhood, in their city, in their country, and in the world as a modern world citizen. And so, in essence, we're not telling them what to think, but we're telling them how to concentrate deeply on these very important subjects that you're bringing up. And then from that inner inspiration, let that guide them in developing, becoming a positive person in the world. And so as you meditate, you develop a deep love within you. You feel for others around you, you feel for the environment. And let that motivate people to then, in whatever ways, they're so creative. You meet people around the world that are helping to solve these different crises.
You're saying that it starts with a certain inner engineering. If we can find peace within ourselves, we'll be in a better position to be able to address these themes.
As you find deeper peace, deeper communion, deeper openness to the guidance that God is giving to each individual, as they do that, then they can share more of that, again, in the world. And so we're not telling people exactly what to think, but we're helping them to learn to concentrate deeply, which helps with powerful thought, and then to attune their lives to God's plan, because God does have a loving plan for the earth, for His world family, for all the animals, for all the people, for all souls everywhere. And so to tune in with that, it takes a quietness of mind to really tune in with that. And so our mission is to teach people how to do that, and then let the inspiration from God be what the inspiration from God is. We don't try to regiment that. We just try to teach people how can they feel that inner guidance, that inner inspiration, and then through their own lives, you see how many people are starting to contribute to the solutions to the big problems that we're facing nowadays. And that just is even more powerful as you plug into that divine source of inspiration.
And while we talk about the concept of higher consciousness, there is another consciousness that the humanity is facing today in the age of innovations. So we're learning about artificial intelligence. It is affecting the way we live and work. Where does it leave space for human intelligence and human consciousness and our aspirations for higher consciousness, as you talk about? How do these coexist?
Yeah, so our guru taught that as technology is advancing within society, and AI will have a lot of positive consequences within society, tremendous in the coming years. And so as that technology advances, we as a human race need to advance our morality and our spirituality to keep pace with this advancement. Because, in the past, technology has advanced, and sometimes humankind has used that in a very negative way. And so it's up to us how we use this new technology. It can be a force for great good in the world, or it could be a force for great evil in the world. And so if we're not developing at the same rate as this technology, then it can be misused. And so our teachings are about learning to develop your intuitive consciousness that is in tune with God, developing your moral sense of what is caring and being concerned about others in the world, not operating from a position of selfishness, but really considering other people's happiness and your own happiness. If that is growing as AI is growing, then there can be a happy marriage.
And so as we're coming to the close of this conversation, I want to return to that question about Indian spiritual traditions and the manner in which you first engaged with them. What do these spiritual traditions from India, what can they teach the world in today's time? What value, according to you, India and its values, its traditions hold in today's time?
Yes. Just a number of years ago, perhaps a decade ago or so, the International Day of Yoga was introduced, worldwide, introducing the concepts of yoga and the different forms of yoga. And that was a wonderful introduction to the deep wisdom that India has garnered over the ages from its saints and sages and then taught within society. And that is really sharing a great wealth, a great spiritual wealth of India with the world, which can be a very positive influence on world peace, on world leaders. And so I would say that it influenced me so quickly that I was surprised how yoga, you learn the simple principles of meditation, and then very quickly it began to influence the amount of peace I felt in my life. And it deepened that. And imagine that spread throughout the world where people can learn very simple meditation techniques. And right away, it doesn't take years to experience the effects of yoga. Right away it can begin. And as I became more peaceful and feeling more love from God, then I was able to share more peace and love. And imagine that multiplied millions and billions of times throughout the world. So I think India has its ancient teachings of yoga has a real place to play in the developing world civilization. And what it means to be a global citizen, to consider the whole world kind of in your embrace. Like Gandhi wanted to embrace the whole world, drew a circle, and he wanted to just include everyone. That spirit of India, if it can be promulgated throughout the world as an example of feeling the world as your family.
And Swamiji, finally, what message would you have for individual societies struggling with difficulties of different kinds, why they must consider turning to yoga and meditation? Your final word.
I would say you can experiment with yoga. Yoga doesn't ask you to believe anything in particular. It gives you something to practice. And if that affects your life in a better way, if you're feeling more God's peace, more love, more joy, then you will know the answer to that yoga is a divine science that really brings the presence of God, the guidance of God, the inspiration of God, the peace of God into your life. And there's no blessing that can match that. We get blessed from our family, from our friends, but the direct blessing of God, to have that direct experience of God, that is what we're all seeking in the highest sense. And if we can achieve that, then we will see our lives are improved and our ability to be a peacemaker, our ability to share peace, love, joy with all those around us. It just goes up and up and up. And so yoga has that wonderful, wonderful blessing and effect on people's consciousness in a very short period of time.
On that note, Swamiji, thank you very much for your time. It was wonderful interacting with you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
That was Swami Saralananda Giri of Yogoda Satsang Society talking about the importance of yoga, meditation and spiritual quest in our daily lives. That sometimes the answers we are so anxiously seeking outside may lie within us. With that, we conclude this edition of In Conversation. Namaskar.